Welcome back to the Flush 'em and Dust 'em podcast. Tyler here, and my right-hand man, the champ, Nick.
Shit.
If you guys listened to the last podcast, you know why he's the champ. So that's going to be his new nickname moving forward. But we got
I did not tell him to say that shit.
I just thought it was funny. He's wearing a gray sweatshirt like Rocky. You know,
it says
there it is.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of Pheasants Forever, we have Jared Wiklund. He is the public relations manager with Pheasants Forever. We're excited to have him on. Him and guy who works with Casey reached out to us, and so we're going to talk about Pheasants Forever in general. Pheasant Fest coming up that hopefully a bunch of you are going to be attending. Just a bunch of other topics tonight. But first off, we'll just have Jared introduce himself and give us some history, and we'll go from there.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Jared Wiklund, live up in the great state of Minnesota. I guess people can argue that point. a lot of our friends in Iowa do, so it's all right. But public relations manager for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever nationally. Kind of got my start, my roots in Iowa. I started working full time for Pheasants Forever as a regional rep in Iowa back in 2009, 2010. In that role, I basically did customer service for 52 chapters in Southern Iowa, including I think a couple that you guys are pretty familiar with in the Des Moines area and even over in Cedar Rapids. And from there, my wife and I had our first child after 6 years on the job and said, hey, we'd like to try to get back to our Minnesota roots, and came back to a public relations position in 2014, I believe it was. And I've been here ever since and feel very fortunate and blessed to work for an organization that's sort of my passion.
Yeah, man,
very, very cool.
Not often everybody can say that they're doing what they're passionate about. So that's
Tyler. He's doing his passion right now too, I think.
Like this, or are you talking about my normal day job?
Your normal day job.
If my boss finds this podcast, I'll be fired. No, so yeah, you're probably super busy right now with Pheasant Fest coming up and getting all that stuff lined up. And how does your role kind of play into that? And what can we be expecting for the weekend of Pheasant Fest?
Yeah, it is a busy time. I like to try to take time off to bird hunt around the holidays and those types of things. But after January rolls around, I try to get one more trip to South Dakota, which I didn't fit in this year, unfortunately. I actually went ice fishing instead, which turned out okay. But my role at Pheasant Fest is kind of multifaceted. I'm helping run some of the stage this year. We'll talk about the main stage here in a little bit and some of the cool topics that we have going on there, but a lot of it is just promotion of the show itself. So I handle basically all the advertising for Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic, which is big. I mean, it's TV stations and newspapers and radio, digital streaming on things to put it in front of people. Geofencing, if people are familiar with that, of different areas in the Twin Cities, and like the Fleet Farms and the Shields and the Wild Games, and people that we know are our people, right? People that enjoy the outdoors.
Yep.
So I do a lot of that, and I do a lot of this too. A lot of podcasting, a lot of interviews, and I also get to answer some of the tough questions that come through. Like, hey, it's been a tough winter so far, and I'm looking for feed to put out for the birds. Is that something Pheasants Forever offers? And deal with a lot of questions like that all the time. So.
What's one of the craziest questions that anybody's asked you?
Kind of putting me on the spot there, Tyler. Boy, I've gotten...
Or one of the dumbest questions, I guess.
There's no such thing as a dumb question.
Oh, well, there actually is.
Honestly, the way I work my job is I sort of live by that, right? Like, everybody deserves an answer to a question. I had a I had a lady, I think it was on the East Coast, and I believe it was a stock bird because it was basically just, it was almost like up on her porch. I think it came from a dog trainer or something. But she asked, "Hey, reaching out to Pheasants Forever, I've got a problem. There's a there's a rooster pheasant walking around on my porch. I can't tell if he's injured or needs help, and where can is there a rehabilitation center I can bring him to?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the outdoors, that'll rehabilitate him." Um, but that I get interesting questions like that all the time. Most of them are pretty straightforward, though. It has, membership, hunting, habitat. How can I get involved with Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever? Sort of those types of things. A lot of hunter oriented questions, I would say.
No, that's good. And you mentioned the the big stage at Pheasant Fest. What is the big stage, and what are they going to have on it this year?
There's a number of different things. For the main stage is sort of a new stage that we have this year. People that are familiar with Pheasant Fest that come every year. Bird Dog stage is obviously a huge draw for people. Our public lands pavilion. This will be the third year we have it. Basically, sort of celebrating the over 800 million acres that we have. And public lands in this country, and then topics surrounding those. So one of them this year is corner crossing, right? Like out in places like Wyoming and elsewhere. But for the main stage this year, I think one of the cool topics that we have is I'm going to be leading a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service panel forum with some leaders in this region from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And do you guys hunt? Do you guys hunt waterfowl production areas at all?
Yeah, every once
Yes.
in a while.
Yep.
So one of the many questions that I get throughout the year is related to, our work on waterfall production areas. What are you guys doing? Are you helping manage those? Obviously, we acquire land, and then land that's maybe next to a waterfall production area, and we donate it as an addition to that area. So it also becomes a waterfall production area. But they get a lot of questions around haying and grazing, tree management. Why aren't there food plots on those types of things? Some of those questions, and then also there's a program that we help run through. It's called the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's meant basically for landowners. I think there's probably a lot less people that know about it though. And if you're a private landowner, it's a great program to get into to establish pheasant habitat, duck habitat, whatever it might be.
It's like, is that like IHAP in Iowa? Are you familiar with that? That's what they
I was
call it here.
habitat. It's not necessarily walk-in access. This one's for
Okay.
private landowners, but we work on both the
Okay.
private side and the public side with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with the waterfowl production areas. So, going to be leading a panel, and I think we're going to be putting out a call for people to submit questions that, like, a lot of you hunt waterfowl production areas. Like, what are some of the big questions you have? Whether it could be management or just what are they? I mean, they're designed for duck production, and pheasants are a byproduct of that on the grasslands around the outside. So I think it'll be a fun,
Them damn
yeah,
cattails, man.
I think it'll be a fun discussion. Hopefully there'll be a little lively debate there too. But we've got some experts on hand, some of the managers for these huge areas where waterfowl production areas live, and I think it's going to be a fun panel for people to be a part of.
And
Nice.
does your normal ticket that you buy, does that give you access to that discussion? Or I know
Yeah.
like sometimes they have extra tickets that you have to buy to be a part of certain
Yep.
things.
The only extra ticket that you really need to buy for Pheasant Fest. So the standard like general admission of the show floor, and that covers all the different stages and things that we have there is $15. I'll give you guys a code at the end if anybody's interested that's listening and wants to attend. We can hook you up with a few tickets. It's no problem. But we've got an Upland Rally banquet on Friday night and the big National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic banquet on Saturday night. Obviously, there's, food costs and other things involved with that and membership. So those are about the only things there that, require another pay for ticket, I guess.
Uh, are you doing anything or a part of? I've seen a lot of discussion around the first aid part for the dog
Mhm.
floor. Um, and have you been a part of any of that discussions to give us an idea of what that's going to entail? And
Yeah. Yep. A little bit. I'm not running that session myself, but I think you're talking about
okay,
the canine trauma session that we're running, correct?
yes, yep,
Yep. So that's designed for $500. You get a life. I know it looks like an expensive deal, right? But it comes with
yeah.
a lot of cool stuff that with it. So it's a couple-hour course, and it's designed. David Gutierrez is one of our regional reps down in the Southwest United States. He used to be a Green Beret. Awesome guy. He's been everywhere, done a lot of cool things. He was in the Green Berets for a long time, huge bird hunter. But he knows the guys that run sort of their canine tactical unit, and they have to be ready to go for trauma for their dogs in case something happens in the field. So he's bringing in some of those partners, and they're just going to give a full breakdown or suite of different types of trauma that can happen in the field and how to deal with that. So for $500, you get a dog life membership for your dog, which is pretty cool. You also get this 3-hour training.
What's a
Sorry, go ahead.
what's the dog life? What's the dog life membership
Uh,
include?
yeah,
Do you know?
dog life membership. It includes a sport dog training collar, and it also is. I think it includes a regular dog collar, if I'm not mistaken, from Orvis as well. And then on top of that, you get a free trauma training kit that comes with this class that you're taking, and then basically all the knowledge to handle things in the field should they arise. And anybody that has a bird dog knows there's anything from getting poked with a stick really bad to running into a barbed wire fence to fights with fights with raccoons or whatever it might be. There's some
Yep.
really bad things that can happen in the field, and this particular seminar is built to
I won't mention any
deal with
names. Probably need a human kit too for some of our buddies that we hunt
that.
with. They shoot each other.
So I think it's a pretty cool training. I believe we have about 45 people signed up for it at this point in time. I think there's a few spots left, but yeah, it's been a pretty popular deal so far.
So when you're going through, you know, I guess building out or planning for Pheasant
Mm.
Fest, what are you looking for new and improved things out there? Where do you start?
Honestly, we talk it over. A lot of us are involved online, right? And you see,
Yep. And I know a lot of the same things are there, but I didn't know if
yeah,
you're always trying to expand in what you're
we
finding,
do.
and people reaching out to you all the time. Hey, we got this, or I guess how do you come across all that
They
stuff?
reach out to us once in a while. A lot of it is through. I think you guys are on some of the same Facebook pages I am, the pheasant hunting junkies and the wild bird hunters, and you see things that come up there. And I take notes once in a while. We do get people that come up and say, "Hey, we'd like to see this at National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic this year." The public lands pavilion that celebrates our public lands, and it's all public land topics. A lot of that came up just a few years ago, and sort of the idea behind that was that the vendors in that particular area, anything that they sell, 10% of their net proceeds come back, and then it's matched by partners to put towards a public land acquisition. So we've kept up with that. That particular one, we helped purchase almost 1,000-acre land acquisition in Minnesota. That was in the crossover between the pheasant and prairie chicken range, which was pretty cool. Um, this
Nice.
Was that purchased this year?
That was last year. Yep, last year.
Nice. That'd be a
It's called
sweet
the
spot.
Cupido WMA. It's a huge, huge property, and Cupido it stands for prairie chicken. Um, this
Nice.
year, one cool one that I think I'd like to point out that different people brought to us, and we reached out to one guy that we know can really deliver here is on the bird dog stage. It's all 30-minute formats this year. It used to be an hour, so we kind of necked it down to 30 minutes at a time. And this particular one is on bird dogs and traps. I'm not sure if you guys have ever been out in the field and dogs ever been caught in a snare. You hear the stories about dogs caught in conibears,
I,
those types of things.
I had a buddy whose dog got caught in a snare, and he thought he was going to lose him, and he ended up taking a knife and like kind of stabbing his dog from how he was telling the story to get under the
Yep,
snare,
yep.
and then he was able to twist it and break it. But he said he thought his dog was going to die.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's those types of things that we like to try to avoid. So one of the people that were bringing this here, his name is Jerry Snetzinger. They call him the Trap Doctor. You guys ever heard of him before?
Haven't.
Have
Based
not.
in Minnesota. I'll just read a little bit about him. His love of upland hunting, trapping, and bird dogs dates to his roots along the Mississippi River in 1950. And he's part of the White Earth tribe. He's a life member of the Rough Grouse Society and the North American Trappers Association. And he dedicates a lot of his time to helping upland hunters and trappers find common ground on public lands. So he's going to talk a little bit about public lands and how trappers and bird hunters, that's a place for everybody, the whole outdoor community to come together. And he's going to go over all sorts of different types of traps. So um, body gripping traps, so conibears, footholds, so that'd be underspring traps, long spring, coil spring, enclosed traps, snares. He's going to talk about the best tools for trap disengagement, um, maybe some resources for becoming a future trapper if people are interested in that. But really kind of connect the pieces how we all live and work in the same area here, and that we all need to get along
Yep.
on public lands, and trappers have a right to be there as well, and having that knowledge of how to get your dog out of a trap and the right tools to carry with you in the field. A lot of people think a Leatherman's not going to cut it for a lot of those different traps or snares.
I bought a actual wire
Yep.
cutters.
Yep. He's
Yeah.
got. He's also going to have a table outside of the dog
Hopefully I'm
area.
on the right. Hopefully I'm on the right
You
path
are.
with that. If
You
you
are.
got other
Yep.
tools.
Because I mean, a lot of those new traps and things. When I interviewed them just a few days ago, talked about how it's made of like basically airplane cable. You can't
Oh,
cut it with a
Jesus.
Leatherman or something small like that. So he's going to have a number of different tools there, and if you stop by his booth, he's also going to have some dog. I think he calls them snare kits or dog. I forget what he calls them, but huge. What are they? He's going to have complimentary nylon zip ties, dog release kits for attendees while supplies last, and show you like if you ever get into a wetland situation where a lot of the conibear traps are set, so body gripping. He's going to show you how to release a dog out of one of those. I think it's pretty cool seminar, and I plan on it being packed with people because it's a hot topic,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that sounds really good.
I can see
And
that.
what day is that? All more than one day,
Yeah,
or
that's on. He's on Friday, Friday and Saturday, I believe, at 1 and 2:30.
okay,
Yep.
nice. And does he have? Do you know if he has Instagram? I was just kind of looking him up.
Jerry Snetzinger, I don't believe he does. He does
Okay,
do. I believe if you go look on YouTube under the Trap Doctor, he does have some YouTube
okay.
videos on there that are pretty well done.
Yeah, I'm scared to Google the Trap Doctor. I don't know what it's gonna come up with.
Yeah, let's keep it PG.
Yeah, the parental guidance on there.
What
Awesome.
is what attendees? What's the attendance like at Pheasants Forever? Is it getting stronger? Do you see a trend of anything? How's
Yeah,
that
actually, it's been really good lately. We're actually sort of still climbing out from the pandemic times. Honestly, when you cancel over 500 banquets, that really puts a wrinkle in your membership number and trying to get. And there's been hesitation, right? People coming back to banquets. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, but I believe we just surpassed the 135 mark, which is where we were in 2020. I mean, Pheasant Fest honestly in 2020 was the last time we were like together with anybody, and it was only a few weeks after that in March that
Yep.
things sort of went awry. So, but our chapters have done a great job coming up with drive-through banquets and things that sort of stem the tide. But people are excited. Banquets are back, and it's been a good year here at Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever and the membership department. So, which is
Good.
awesome.
Yeah.
Do you? So you're part of. So what is your favorite part of Pheasant Fest out of all the stuff that's going to be happening this year?
Honestly, for me, it's sort of an upland party, if you will, and I get to see people that I maybe only see once a year, if that. That's probably the biggest thing when you talk. I don't know if you want to call them influencers or other people, but anything from podcasters to outdoor writers to People like Carl Gunzer, who works for Purina, who's a big sponsor of ours. I've hunted with him in the past. Just wonderful people that care about the mission, and I would say that's probably one of the best parts. Is just being able to mingle in that upland space. I guess what I tell people is like it's sort of a way to extend your season without hunting. You know what I mean? You're coming in,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
coming into a community of people that are very like-minded and all are very passionate about upland hunting, whether that's pheasants or quail, prairie grouse, rough grouse, whatever it might be. So that's probably the best part about it.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
pretty
Last
cool.
year was my first year going, and it was crazy. Just like you walk around, and I mean, I think this is our first time we did or last year was the first time that we were at the podcast or have had the podcast when we actually went. And it was crazy the amount of people that just recognized like our voice from
Yep.
the podcast or recognize our face and stuff, that we've never even met in person. And they're like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. It's like, which is pretty cool that people are actually listening to
I,
us. Some,
I think the other aspect of Pheasant Fest that I would point to is like um if you're into upland gear, like all the newest stuff is there. Like last year they had a
oh,
couple
yeah.
new vests at Pheasant Fest last year where Final Rise and some of those came out with some new ones and they were stacked like 6 7 people deep buying vests like
Oh, it was
the
packed in that
yeah the
aisle.
whole weekend, which is awesome. That's what we like to see for our vendors.
Can you think of any new products, if you can say, that are going to be there that are maybe hitting the floor pretty heavy this year off the top of your head?
I know there's some. I can't. We had a very short call about some of our staff were out at SHOT Show meeting with partners and stuff. There are some new shotguns and some new upland opportunities coming on the gear side.
Nice.
Off the top of my head, I just can't. I'm going to tell you that I don't know
Yeah.
because I can't list them all out. But some of them were talked about on a call here not too long ago. Um,
I'm always up for a new
yeah,
shotgun.
me too. Me too. Me too. I think, the other side of it too is like there's just a lot of good information besides the gear and meeting people. We have some of the best dog trainers in the world on that Birds dog stage, which is cool. I mean, I would say 6 or 8 of like some of the top trainers in the country that have a lot of
Yep.
combined knowledge, which is awesome. If you're getting a new dog or you've got an issue with a dog at home, obedience, training, whatever it might be, I think the people on that stage can really help sort it out, which is cool. On the habitat side, for landowners, we've got professional biologists in just standing by in the habitat help room there. Like if you want to go plan out, like, hey, I've got a 40 acres and I want to make it a pheasant factory. I want to make it the best it can possibly be for producing pheasants or producing quail or deer, turkey, whatever it is. We've got biologists there that'll work with you, send you home with a conservation program or plan rather, and then hook you up with other biologists that are actually in your area that'll come out and meet with you on your property for free. It's a pretty
Oh
Yeah.
pretty
man,
cool planning
that's
process.
pretty. That's awesome.
That'd be a dream.
Yeah.
40
Yep.
acres and,
But
you know,
honestly, that's why we focus so much on public lands too, because I would say the majority of our members, um, you know, anywhere from zero acres or point
oh,
oh one
yeah.
that their house sits on, all the way up to
Yeah.
10, 20, 40. The majority of them are just public land hunters, like I think a lot of us are. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
and that's a
Yep.
big part of the show.
Yeah.
Focus a ton on that too, and what we're doing with all of our initiatives. And we've purchased a lot of land in Iowa, especially this past couple of years, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't,
Yep.
I don't, I don't even honestly.
What's your big projects coming up, maybe land wise or, after Pheasant Fest that's coming up for 2023 that, we can be looking out for the 2023-24 season that can get people, kind of amped up for helping out?
Yeah, I think there's probably a number of different things, and I probably won't get too into the weeds on them just because land acquisitions and permanent habitat projects, if they
Yeah.
get out ahead of time, they have a tendency to fall apart, honestly. But
Yep.
I would say Iowa is really a mecca for us in working on public land acquisition. We've got a couple different pieces that we celebrated this last year. There was a Skunk River piece that's probably, I don't know, probably halfway between where you guys live. That was just over 400 acres. That was awesome. We just got done doing another piece up in Marshall, Tama County, right on the river. That was unbelievable. And I know right now we've got four other pieces in the works, just in the state of Iowa alone, just to make it more localized for you. That have been pretty
Nice.
cool. And are going to be great upland hunting public areas for us. On the quail side, you guys might have seen the Bob White Hills that we just did at the end of the year. It was our first
I did.
public land acquisition east of the Mississippi River in the Quail Range. That was in South Carolina. That was nearly 800-acre project, which was awesome.
Oh wow.
Oh
And
wow.
that abuts a 2,000-acre wildlife management area. So that's where you're building like complexes, right? It's strategic, building more capacity for wildlife, which is awesome. One of the things I would say, maybe not on the permanent side, but what we really need help with from members coming up here is we're going to be doing a lot of advocacy work around the 2023 Farm Bill. And I know like some people hear that and say, "Well, what does that have to do with me?" Well, anybody who hunts any walk-in access properties whatsoever, and I have Iowa Habitat and Access Program is included in that. um, we're pushing hard for VPA HIP funding and to get more funding so that we can open up more private lands to public hunters. That's a really big deal in the next farm bill. Also, the number of acres that enrolled in CRP, it's gone down throughout the years. I think a lot of people remember back when the Conservation Reserve Program was kind of at its modern day peak, around 38 to 40 million acres in 2000, 2007, kind of going into 2008. And we had a lot of states that corresponded with really, really high upland bird numbers at that time. Since then, the Farm Bill's passed. It dropped it down, almost cut it in half, down to 24
Jesus.
million acres. Um, and that's a lot. It's a lot of grassland habitat. That's a lot of
Yeah, it
square
is.
miles of grassland habitat lost just the swipe of a pen. So we're going to be asking people through action alerts and other things like, hey, speak up to your legislators in your state and who represent you in Congress. It's going to be a really big deal here, the 2023 Farm Bill. We got the Grasslands Act through last year, which was a big deal, the North American Grasslands Conservation Act. It got introduced in the Senate. It's a new Congress now, so we're kind of having to start over. We're going to try to get that reintroduced again and try to push that through as well. So I think on those couple of things, those are big deals for bird hunters that might not seem like it on the surface, but when you start diving into it, that's a lot of habitat for
Years
people to hunt.
years down the
Oh
road, I
yeah,
mean, it's gonna pay
yeah, we're
off.
talking anywhere from 5 to 15 year contracts, so which is big.
Yeah, that is huge. How long does it take? You're talking about that South Carolina property and whatnot. How long does that take for you guys to get it built up to where you feel wildlife sustainable, or that it's kind of managing itself a little bit?
Um, I would say acquisitions in general. So we really look. A lot of times we have conservation-minded landowners that come to us, and we've got lands that are already rolled in some type of federal or state program, and some of them sit pretty good. Other times there's landowners that come to us. There might be some degraded cropland or something on there. It takes a little bit to do. I'll tell you this in general is that most of our land acquisition work, each property is probably anywhere from a year to 3 years in the making. I mean, it's not just something that happens overnight. Um, there's a
Yeah.
huge process, an appraisal process that it has to go through because typically we abide by we don't go above the average appraisal price for that particular property, and that's for a number of different reasons. But we're looking for properties that work well for conservation, and that's typically properties that don't produce well, for commodity crops and those types of things, have wetlands on them, which some of those properties we bought in Iowa this last year were a really good example of that. But after we acquire properties, I would say it's a good 14 to 16 months probably when we donate properties to the DNR, to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to a county conservation board, we like to make sure that they're in the best spot possible as far as quality habitat goes. Um, and
Yeah.
if we can do that and keep doing that at the pace that we have been, good things are happening. At the same time, there's a lot of grassland loss too. There's different things in the world. You look at the war in Ukraine and the amount of wheat production over there and feeding the world. Like there's different. United States is target number one to come up with those acres, and that takes grassland off the landscape. So we got to figure out innovative ways to help landowners find that niche for conservation on their properties.
Yeah, that's gotta be. It's just gotta get tougher and tougher too with bigger farms or more people that would need to feed or
That's probably the biggest.
more cattle, more pigs, more
That's probably the biggest one is more
like
people. Um, we
yeah,
can work really well with cattle producers, ranchers. Like
yeah,
I mean that's a domesticated buffalo is all that is.
yeah,
We used to produce a lot of birds in that region too back when we had those animals. But yeah, we've found, I know a lot of ranchers in South Dakota and other places that buku bird numbers, buku wildlife numbers in general on their properties because they're farming for wildlife. Yep,
both.
yep,
Yeah, no, that's pretty
yep.
awesome. How has uh how has the winter being up in Minnesota treated you guys so far this year, and how's the forecast looking? I should say.
I think it's maybe a little bit too early to tell yet. I can tell you this is that most regions in Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota are way above their average amount of snow for this time of year. Um, any,
Yeah. Well, shit. Didn't North Dakota have like 2 feet or some crap
Yes.
like that before in like December or
yeah,
early
that's probably the
December?
biggest thing. And I like to tell people a lot, and I actually learned this, I think it was from Todd Bogenschutz of the Iowa DNR, is that a pheasant really, snow depth is one thing, but a pheasant really counts the days of winter and the amount of time that they have to spend on a white background. And this year it's significant. We've Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, maybe little parts of northern Iowa. I know it melted off a bit, but we had snow way. I like to get to January 1st without having any snow, and then I feel pretty good about the rest of the winter. We did
Yep.
not have that this year. If you guys
No,
hunted up north
I
at
think
all,
we had snow in November,
yeah,
didn't we?
Yeah, we had a little bit.
Here,
We had a blizzard here. Oh, back in December,
early December
early
too.
December. But I mean, it usually we get we'll get 6, 7, 8 inches, and then it's 50
yep,
degrees the next two
melts
weeks,
away.
and it melts away. Yeah, so like this weekend we just got it was small snowstorm down here, but this weekend it's supposed to be 40 degrees, so most of it will be gone,
That'll
and we
be
only
good.
have an inch to 2 inches maybe on the ground, if that, in certain
That's
places.
awesome. Yep.
So I think it's been a pretty mild winter as long as they didn't get buried under the snow during that
Yeah,
blizzard.
I think it's localized, in Minnesota and South Dakota, like some of my rancher buddies and farming buddies I went to school with have said like, that storm we got before Christmas that was rain, sleet, ice, and then heavy wet snow followed by cold temperatures and a 4-day blizzard afterwards
Ugh.
was like the 4 worst days of weather that they've seen in a long, long time. I'm talking we're stacking up snow, and we've had a couple other blizzards since then. You're talking 10 to 20 foot snow drifts in
Yeah,
ditches, in shelter belts, and sacking entire cattail sloughs. And that's where I worry about them more. Not very often are pheasants going to die from starvation. They've got native food sources. There's grain out there that they're going to find it. I mean, that's just they're a very
yeah, the
yeah, they're a
nature.
hardy
Yep.
bird, But when you sack all their habitat and then you've had 5 days in a row of you know below zero weather like we've had sort of in the upper Great Plains here, you wonder how those birds can survive. But I say that I looked outside this morning and you wouldn't think there's any room left in a cattail slough, and I watched them fly into my corn plot and they looked happy as can be. So I think it generally just depends. If they have good thermal cover and a food source, they're going to be okay. But we have a lot of winter left to go yet. We know we're going to get another
Yes, we
storm
do.
at some point. So
Yeah. The worst is probably like when we get a big old ice
Yeah.
storm, because it just covers food and they can't, unless they can peck through it with their beaks or something of that
And
nature.
that's
But
really where you get into trouble, especially like if you don't have good cover. Ice can kill a pheasant, and quail population in southern Iowa knows this very well. Ice
oh
can
yeah,
get after them real quick. It's bad. We had to have quite a few ice storms early on this year, but everybody I've talked to, the birds seem to come okay out of those first one or two ice storms, which is good. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
that's huge.
I was just up in by Spencer area. What was it? Not last week, the week before, 2 weeks ago, and there was birds everywhere in the field. I probably saw 200
yep,
birds.
yep.
Not in the same field, but I mean, just by driving, I saw them. They were all over the
Oh,
place.
I frequent Spencer quite a bit. I'm not going to tell
Yeah,
you
you
exactly
you
where, but
you Minnesotans coming down here and
blue blue
taking all our
platers,
was
blue
birds.
that
platers.
was that
Yeah,
was that
blue
you this
platers.
year? The third weekend in November up there, I saw some Minnesota plates. I should have flattened your tires.
Yeah, we shot all limits too. No, no.
No wonder we didn't see any damn
We
birds.
actually filmed a show for the Flush this year in northern Iowa, and we hunted a little bit of public, but we lined up some landowners that are big Pheasants Forever constituents, and we went and hunted with them and kind of told their wildlife story and just strong bird population. I think across the board in Iowa this year, whether you're hunting public or private, it was really good, really good.
Yeah, no, I thought the bird numbers were good too. We had pretty good success, and they were flighty as all get out. But man, it was a tough year. I mean, we saw a ton of birds, but
Yeah,
it was
it
it
was
was one of our
my
tougher years.
worst. Yeah, it was my worst year. I would say I've had in a long time in terms of the birds I shot. I saw a ton of
Yeah.
birds. I just didn't get
What
opportunities.
I've heard that from
Yeah,
multiple people, and I'm wondering if it's just because it was so dry going in the fall. Everybody talked about how it was just so dry and so crackly when you're walking through it that getting close to some of those birds was tough. And I guess it makes sense if that's the case. But I heard that across the board, not just in Iowa, but Minnesota, South Dakota. Like, man, the birds were flighty this year. And I honestly, I don't know if there's rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, I mean we have a couple private spots that are absolutely stocked of birds. I mean they're just loaded. And I mean we shot 7 off there, and we probably saw 200 birds on that
Hmm.
property.
yeah.
We could
Couldn't
not
even
get
get
close. We
close to
couldn't
them.
get close to them.
I When we were up with the Flush in northern Iowa, there's a landowner that we've been working with for a long time. He's a seed dealer, but he's taken some of his more unproductive areas and putting it into habitat over the last 10, 15 years. And he invited us down with the Flush to come kind of tell his story. And they needed somebody to post on the end of a big piece of CRP that had a food plot on the edge of it. And everybody has a dog, so like nobody wanted to do it, obviously.
Yeah,
But I was the guy that was kind of bringing everybody along on the trip. So I said, listen, I'll go sit on the end and just hold them in. And I'm not even going to fire. I'm just going to sit there with the dog and try to keep them in until you guys get down there. And I sat there against a power pole and watched I don't know, plenty of roosters, but probably 75 hens going like 5 feet off or 5 yards off the deck, coming right past my head for like 20 minutes straight. I mean, it was insane. And I think that just goes to show, like, a couple years ago that wasn't the case in Iowa. Like, you go back to 20, maybe more than a couple years, but like 2012, 13, 14, after those last big snow events we had, and it was hard hunting. But I'll tell you what, the birds have really responded in that state, which is awesome.
yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah.
starting to see them in spots that you normally wouldn't, and
Did you hear about the derecho that went through Iowa?
Yeah, the
Jared?
80-mile-an-hour wind. My
Yeah.
parents were driving up to my
Yeah.
house during that from Arizona, actually.
oh
Um,
geez,
do you think that affected the bird population at all? So the reason I asked that is because we have a private spot that nobody actually bird hunts, and I get to go with my buddies and hunt it, and we get maybe one bird off there, but it was hit hard by derecho. Like trees are down, and I mean all sorts of stuff. The crops were damaged and all that, and we barely see any. It's like perfect. I mean, there's like a little creek that runs down through it. There's corn on all the
Yeah.
sides, and then you get down to like the very middle of it, and it's almost like a little pond, if you will. And I mean, it's got habitat, it's got grass, it's got cattails. I mean, this is everything. We got one bird this year off it, and years past we got none.
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
That's
it's
yeah.
crazy.
I don't know about the derecho and what kind of effects that had. I mean, I know it left a lot of ground in a bad spot for farmers, which was horrible. From a wildlife perspective, I think there was a lot of weedy fields and stuff this year that actually probably contributed to pheasant production or wildlife production in general, because a lot of them were like prevent plant and other stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. The eastern side of the state should have benefited because it blew all the pheasants over to that side, right? Right, Tyler?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. If they got lifted up in there, man, they were they were
Yeah, not
gone.
Kansas
Yep.
anymore. Yeah, I don't honestly. I didn't hear of any real fallout from bird wise from that. To be totally honest.
Yeah, I didn't know. I've never heard of that before. But the guy that I go with and has permission to hunt, he was telling me that it used to be loaded, and he said ever since it seems like derecho came through, he's like there's nothing there. And I mean, we've never gotten a bird. Like I said, we just got one rooster this year, but other than that, we haven't gotten a bird in the last like 3 years
Huh.
there, or since derecho. I guess that was 3 years ago, wasn't
2020. Yeah.
Yeah,
2020?
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
that's interesting. I don't know. I don't have a
Yeah.
good
So I
answer
don't.
for you there.
Mhm. Maybe there's just a lot of coyotes and fox and everything in there, and we just I don't know.
Could
I
have
have no
been.
idea.
Coons. Yeah.
Coons, hawks. I don't know. I don't no idea. But it's like one of those places you'd be like, oh god, we're gonna limit out in 20 minutes. That's what you think when you pull up.
Did you guys
Don't.
did you guys see the coyote post we did the other day?
The
I don't.
article that
Yeah.
you did, I did see that. Is that one? Is it a new one or is that one you guys have?
No,
posted
that's
before?
one we actually used it in the magazine a couple years ago. And I always we like to repost it every once in a while just to get people talking a little bit. I think it's honestly, I think it's good for people to talk about effects of predators and those types of things. But from that, we're actually coming out with a podcast here with some experts from state agencies, fur bear,
Oh, nice.
fur bear experts and people that did their sort of PhDs on those types of issues. So I think it's going to be a really really interesting podcast as long as we're on the
Oh,
topic.
nice.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Is which podcast is that be on?
That's going to be on the Wing podcast with Bob St.
On the
Pierre.
wing with
And
Bob.
for listeners that might
Nice.
not know what it was, I guess the premise of it was we had a writer that interviewed a couple different biologists. I think he interviewed one of the Iowa pheasant biologists as well, along with some other states, and basically talked about how when there's more coyotes on the landscape, they're actually helping to take some of the fur bearers out. So like the raccoons and the
Coons
possums and other things that actually do a number on pheasant nests and upland bird nests. So it's an interesting
Yeah, that makes.
debate.
I didn't see. I don't think I saw that post.
You have to go
I'll have
You
to
have
go
to go
back
back
and
and
look.
look.
I'll have
Yeah,
to go
we're
back
gonna
and
have
look.
a podcast out on that though. I think it'll be pretty interesting. There's people on both sides of the argument, obviously, but when you think about it, it's like, well,
Makes
they did a
sense.
lot of work in North Dakota and waterfowl nests and stuff, and they would actually put collars on coyotes. We actually interviewed Dr. Bill Clark from Iowa State University, who used to run their natural resources department, and he talked about how when they had more coyotes in the area, it would move out the fox and raccoons and other things that were a lot more of a detriment to nesting hen pheasants, which I thought was pretty cool research. So,
Yeah, like the way I look at it is, you think about it, for a coyote to catch a pheasant is a lot harder than for a coon or a possum to eat a whole nest of
yeah, I
eggs.
mean even dogs
You know,
dogs
like,
don't catch that many pheasants, and we train them to find them. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
they're more of
crazy.
a flush. They're more of a flusher. Like they'll work in singles or pairs and like to flush rabbits and go after mice and things like that. So yeah, it'll be a pretty cool. I think it'll be a pretty cool podcast topic, to be totally honest.
Yeah, that'll be a really good one. How was your season up in Minnesota since you had such a great season in
Yeah,
Iowa?
yeah. Iowa was fantastic. Minnesota. Honestly, across the board, I think just about everywhere in sort of the upper Midwest, upper Great Plains, however you want to define it, was great. We had the last three winters have been pretty mild to a degree. Springs have been pretty good, and I would say pheasant populations in our region that we're talking about here have boomed to some degree. I'm in places I've talked to plenty of people like, yeah, we're flushing 30, 40 birds at a time on public lands when they're finding them, especially later in the season. Early season was good. And even like South Dakota's late season that just got over here this past weekend, past week, whatever. Um, Plenty of guys out there that I normally go hunting with are sending me text messages of birds that they're getting. They're stacked up in a lot of shelter belts and anywhere there's thick
Yeah.
woody cover or any cattails that are open. But even all those birds too, like they have a lot of fat on them. Like they're weathering the storm to some degree, you know. So
Yep.
I think
Yeah.
upland hunting in general this year was good, but um, I'm not going to get too worried yet because we got some 30-degree temperatures here and things are looking better for the birds to get out and bulk back up again from probably losing some body fat during these really cold temperatures. But um, cautiously optimistic, I guess. But at the end of the day, this could be a rebuilding year for some of our best pheasant populations: Iowa, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Montana, parts of Nebraska. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Knock on wood, we have winters like we have the past 2-3 years and easy
Oh yeah,
springs where it's been, you know, get the rains when you need them, but you don't get the rains when they're in the nesting phase to drown the nest and all that
Yeah.
good stuff, which
I don't
is seems to be
I don't
helping.
know about Iowa, but like Minnesota this year, we had a really wet spring early on, and then basically somebody just turned the faucet off, and the end of May all the way through June it was picture perfect nesting weather, and honestly
Yep.
that's what contributed. A lot of people thought we were screwed at first for the hatch, and then what do you know, you have perfect hatching conditions when they need it the most. Chicks can't
Yep.
regulate their body temperature for that first 2 weeks, and if it doesn't rain, no problem, hen can keep them warm. So
Yeah. A lot easier to keep something warm when they're dry than something warm when
yep,
they're wet.
yep, yeah, that was kind of that spring can play a huge factor for helping populations recover if we get good ones. So yeah, we'll see
Yep.
what happens with winter.
Yeah. Do you guys have any big banquets outside of the Pheasant Fest coming up that chapters and whatnot that you do with them?
Yeah, we've got huge banquets coming up in places. One I would point to, kind of in your neck of the woods, is, well, it's sold out at this point, but that Northern Polk Pheasants Forever banquet. I just can't say enough good things about that chapter, and honestly, I'm probably jaded a little bit in the fact that I used to live and work there, and I'm friends with all those guys, but this is Northern Polk Pheasants Forever is located in Ankeny, Iowa, and like many chapters out there, you look at the demographics of that chapter. They skewed a lot younger now. There's a bunch of young guys in there that are passionate about bird hunting. That's what honestly we like to see because we've got a lot of baby boomers that are starting to age out a little bit and moving away from the chapters. So a chapter like that's done a great job getting new blood infused. Um, you know, kind of back in the time when I was down there and after I left, you've got a group of guys that have taken over that they went from 125 to 150 person banquet for their first 20 years to a about 500 person banquet for the next 20 here. It's
Dang.
pretty
Jesus.
incredible what they can do, what they've done with land acquisition, learn to hunt, adult mentor hunts, which I don't know if you guys have been a part of those, but uh, everything that they're doing as a chapter is pretty cool, and I would just say it's a chapter that represents the organization really well.
Yeah. What are a couple? I mean, you said have the youth hunts and whatnot. What are some things that you've seen other chapters that have helped them succeed and bring numbers up? Maybe not just the Northern Polk one, but just a couple things that you feel more chapters could do to help out.
Um, Honestly, I think it's that's why we give chapters that local model, right? Volunteers can make the chapter as big and as great as they want. We've got chapters in places where there aren't pheasants or quail within 500 miles, and they have just absolutely huge events. So, a couple of things I would point to is, for a chapter like mine that's located in the Twin Cities here, pretty metro located, we still contribute to a lot of land acquisitions, which is great. We have a lot of chapters that want to see more public land, and they partner with us on that. Hands-on habitat days. Chapter's been doing that since 1982, but we actually have, like, I would say, actual days called hands-on habitat days now that we promote and get people out in the field. We did a big one last year here in my neck of the woods and removed a bunch of volunteer trees on public grasslands along with some invasive species and garbage, which is awesome. Learn to hunt events for adults and youth. Learn to shoot events for adults and youth. Women on the wing events, that continues. Women continue to be one of the fastest growing demographics in the country
Yeah.
right now, just not just in Upland, but in hunting in general. So we have a lot of women on the wing chapters and focused events. Last year, we did 95 women on the wing focused events that impacted over 1,600 participants, which is
Nice.
way
Dang.
above what we were the previous year, and we're going to knock that out of the park this year, which is going to be great. Um, Chapter projects in general, so contracting work on WMAs, WPAs, county owned properties. I encourage a lot of different chapters. If you're looking for a habitat project, a best place to start is with your public lands manager. Like, hey, what is this property outside of our city? What does it need done on it to produce more wildlife or more upland wildlife? And that's everything
Yeah.
from tree removals to grass seedings to whatever it might be. Down in the Southwest, we do a lot of water guzzler projects still for those chapters that live in more arid regions, which are
Yeah.
which are cool. Those are multi-day projects where they fix water guzzlers and fill them back up. We got a food plot seed program. At the end of the day, like, nesting habitat's the most important thing we can do. But in a
Yep.
winter like this, instead of calling in and be like, hey, do you guys provide corn that I can, throw on the side of the road for a pheasants? That's where a 3-acre food plot can really come in handy during a nasty, nasty
Yeah.
winter, so they don't have to go far from cover. So, and then advocacy work. We've got chapter volunteers that are big into advocacy. In Iowa, you guys are probably familiar with Iowa's water and land legacy. We got the basic, we got it passed. We're trying to figure out the funding mechanism still, and a lot of that has to do with legislation and things. But anything from the Farm Bill to some of these big grassland conservation acts that we're working on, advocacy is huge, and we fly out chapter members all the time that represent their communities to talk with legislators. So those are just a couple of the different things I think that chapters
Wow.
do and can do very well.
It's a solid
Yeah,
list.
it's all good, but at the end of the day, habitat rules all. We need more nesting habitat. It's the number one limiting factor in this country for upland bird populations, and we do. I can't talk about it yet, but I think we've got a pretty awesome sort of community-based program that we're going to be focusing on coming out here in 2023 for signing
Nice.
up more private acres for public land hunting. Um, yeah,
Nice.
Sweet. Can't wait to see
and
that come
I
out
think if
then.
that goes well, you're going to see some major things happening in communities that appreciate hunters and outdoorsmen and women coming to their communities. So more to come on
Heck
that, but
yeah.
that's going to be a cool process.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
No, that'll be great coming in 2023, and um, looks like some good things in the works and whatnot. But um, we're right at an hour right now, so we usually try to keep it right there. And I know
All
you
good.
mentioned a code that you wanted to shoot out, so if you wanted to drop that, you could.
Yeah.
But
Um,
um,
Encourage everybody to come out to National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic. If you've never been there before, it's a community gathering of like-minded folks that love to upland hunt, love bird dogs, love public lands, and honestly, that's what the show is all about. It runs February 17th through the 19th at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And if you want tickets to learn more about all the things that are going on there, you can go to pheasantfest.org. You can go to the ticketing page and work your way through the tickets, and eventually it's going to ask you for if you have a discount code, and you can use FEST, FEST, FEST 23 in capital letters, and that'll get you a couple free tickets to come to the show. And look me up, look us up when you get there. It's going to be a fun event, and we're going to be doing all sorts of podcasts and all sorts of things at the show itself. So encourage people to come on out.
Yeah.
Get on out there,
Awesome.
guys. Support it.
It's fun. We were there last year. Excited to go back this year.
Sweet.
So.
Look forward to seeing you guys.
Well, Jared, thank you for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever.
Yes, thank you
for
so
doing
much.
everything that you guys do for the Upland community and trying to give us more places to hunt and to keep the legacy going for future hunters too. So again, we appreciate you coming on the podcast, taking the time to talk about what you guys all do. And we look forward to seeing you and seeing everybody else that's listening at Pheasant Fest this year.
Sounds good. Have a good rest of the winter, and let's hope for a good spring.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys.
Talk to you later.